Set!
Blitz is defined as a sudden, savage attack. It is indeed all this. The effect is sure. The premise is simple. It's a basic, primal confrontation, man to man. No excuses are offered. None accepted.
Welcome to the latest edition of Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com.
Looks like a radio station.
Now, here are your hosts, lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers,
Pure athlete, yeah. I transcend race, hombre.
Matt Butler,
I don't talk, man. I back it up.
And we are chock full of that, man.
Damn right.
and Jeff Howe.
It's still real to me, damn it.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
If you're gonna blitz, come strong, but don't come at all.
Coming strong with a post-NFL draft edition of Longhorn Blitz with Horns 24/7. I am Jeff Howe. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. Let me bring in the rest of the team. He is the master of the soundboard, the drop machine extraordinaire, Matt Butler. Matt, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty well. Yourself?
I'm chilling, man. If Travis, the best damn videographer in the podcast game, is on top of his game this week, if it looks like I'm just kind of chilling and lounging, it's because I got the short chair this week. So, yeah.
Low rider.
Yeah.
If I look relaxed, it's because I'm having to sit this way to make sure I can fit in the camera and not be uncomfortable.
Literally laid back.
For an entire show. So, yes. Other than that, Matt, I'm doing great. My daughter started walking last week. So,
Oh, congrats.
proud dad moment. We had a huge milestone. So, I'm doing wonderful. Rod, I'll show you the video. I haven't had a chance to show you the video yet.
I want to see that. That's
when we
pretty
get
awesome.
Yeah, babies, like, their faces whenever they realize they're doing something like
Yeah.
that, like starting to walk.
Oh,
that's
it's the
awesome.
greatest thing
It's
in the
amazing
world.
that you got it on video. That was you quick
Yeah.
on the trigger. Did
Yeah.
you expect it? Or how'd
No,
you-
no. My wife's grandmother stayed with us last week because my wife was in D.C.
Yeah.
on a school trip, so which my wife missed us, so she was crushed about that.
Oh.
But my wife's grandmother, she's like, I'll get her walking. This was Sunday, so Wednesday. Wednesday, she's like, hey,
They're putting the
she's like,
trails
hey,
and everything.
she's like, hey, get your phone ready. I got something to show you. So I'm filming, and she's like walking. I'm like, oh my god, I'm freaking
That's
out.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like teaching her how to ride a bike, basically. Like mom,
Yeah.
taught her how to walk.
Grandma,
My wife's
she
grandma-
knows she's been around the
Crazy.
world.
I did not know that was a thing.
My wife's
assumed-
grandma's old school, man.
I assumed you
She's-
just kind of started when you started. I didn't know people
No.
like to train, like
she would
training
like
wheels.
like
almost.
refuse to let her crawl. She's like, nope, you're gonna stand up and at least grab onto something and not
Wow.
crawl. So yeah,
Good
it's
for moms, man. That's hardcore. I like that.
yeah.
And
Like I
old
said, my
school,
wife's
baby.
grandma, she's old school. A man who knows about old school stuff, new school stuff, because he is a Renaissance man.
I know you
Not
trained the
just
baby to walk. I didn't know that.
not just at the Austin Radio Network and the Horn, where you can hear him each and every
Learn
day
behavior.
on the Rodcast for 103, but here on Longhorn Blitz, here's our lockdown corner on the show. Lifetime Longhorn, 2002 UT All-American. Draft choice of the New York Giants back in 2003 in the fourth round. Spent his NFL career with the Giants, Lions, Bears, Bucks, Broncos, and a year with the Hamilton Tiger Cats of the CFL. When he was done with football, got himself back to Austin, Texas at 40 acres where he earned his degree. When he gets that T-ring back in, he will wear it proudly. Nevertheless, he is a card-carrying member, a black card member of DBU, number 21 in your program, number 1 in your hearts, Mr. Rod Babers. And
Boom.
Rod, we
for the
talk
intro.
about this. I know we got a lot of new listeners on the show, so thank everybody. However you listen to this show, you're getting a megaphone feed. You go to horns247.com on the drop-down menu and listen to it that way. You're an Apple Podcast guy, Google Play. However you're getting it, we just appreciate it. Wherever you get it, by the way, make sure you leave us a review and rate us. We would greatly appreciate it. But we got a lot of new listeners, and thank you guys so much for listening and downloading. We've heard Rod tell these stories before, but it's always fun to everybody that hasn't listened before. Rod, I'll walk everybody through. You were a fourth-round draft choice, as I said, back in 2003 by the New York Football Giants.
123rd.
123 overall, and there's still a Giants blogger who thought the Giants should have taken Brandon Lloyd instead of Rod.
He might have been right. I mean,
I don't know,
Brandon Lloyd turned out to be a better player.
There's a
than me,
Giants
you know.
blogger who has rated Rod as one of the worst Giants draft picks of the 2000s. So
Hey, you know what? Not after this draft. So, I'll be bumped from the list. Blogger.
Thank you, Daniel Jones.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Gettleman's going for it.
We forgot all about Rod B in New York.
Right.
Thanks to Gettleman. Thank
Yep,
you.
yep.
Thank
But
you,
it-
Dave Gettleman.
But at
Forgot
any,
about all those bad
We
draft
won't
picks.
trade you for hot pretzels or a hot dog or a bag of donuts. So
at any rate, Rod, when you get to, because correct me if I'm wrong, your day, the draft was 2 days. It was first and third was 1 day, and then I think 4 through 7 was the second day.
I believe that's
Yeah,
how
that's
it
how
was.
it is.
Yeah.
Does that
Now
sound
it's
right,
broken up
Matt?
into 3
Yeah.
yeah,
days,
Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there just kind of chilling, waiting for the phone to ring. What happened? Well, I believe if I remember your story right, you didn't even get the phone call. You saw it on the screen
I
first.
saw it on the screen first. It happens for a lot of guys because, I mean, it may be like a simultaneous thing or, somebody else may be calling you at the time and they're putting the picks in. But yeah, I mean, I saw it on the screen. I was basically sitting at home, and I expected my name to be called the second day. I mean, I didn't get a lot of advice that said I was going to be taken in the first 2 rounds of the draft. It was third and later. It's pretty much all the counsel that I got and all the predictions that I got. So, and I knew it was going to be called probably that second day. So I'm just sitting around, and the worst part about the draft is sitting around watching. I always recommend do not sit around and watch the draft if you're expecting to be drafted. Like it really is torture for you. It's just you
mentally.
know what I mean? Mentally, it is. And I know some guys like I like it because it's a chip on my shoulder, seeing all the teams that passed me up. To me, it was not good. It was not soup for the soul. You know what I mean? It just put me mentally in a bad place. So I didn't like it. I want to enjoy the experience of my dreams coming true. And I don't think I really enjoyed it like I was supposed to.
Because every 15 minutes you're just on a
you're
waiting.
just
And
sitting
then
around there. You ever see the
restart.
draft parties of the guys who get drafted really late and they have the draft party and everybody around them is going crazy and they're just kind of sitting there in this emotional, like just exhaustion.
Stewing.
Yeah, exactly. They just don't really know how to even process it.
I can speak from experience because I was at Deontay Foreman's draft party a couple of years ago, and especially because his prediction, we've talked about this with these Texas drafts.
And the running backs,
they've kind of been all over the place where, man, you can go anywhere from the 2nd to the 5th. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, Charles Aminu, prime example. But especially at Deontay is where you're watching, you know, especially you had that run on running backs in the 3rd round. It's like Alvin Kamara comes off the board. Kareem Hunt comes off the board. It's like there's this run on backs. And you're like, man, you start looking at needs. It's like, well, who needs a running back? And I remember myself and Deontay's dad, Derek, we were sitting. There's a couple TVs in a couple different rooms, and then all of a sudden, Deontay's phone rings, and like everybody starts screaming, "It's a Houston number! It's a Houston number!" So,
281.
Yeah. And you know what?
And then it's like, everybody shut up! Everybody shut up!
Yeah. So, and for me, I was actually in the room by myself when I got the call. Like I was in my room at home. And I think my dad was downstairs and my mom was downstairs. And my dad started yelling at me because he saw it on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Then I got the phone call. And then that's when everybody went crazy.
Because your hopes have been up this whole time, and then you're waiting these 15 minutes, and then it's like you finally have to go to the bathroom or something, and then somebody gets the call while you're in there.
It was a surreal, weird experience. I just wouldn't recommend watching it. I mean, pay attention to it. Don't just, ignore it. Yeah. But I wouldn't sit there and obsess about it. Man, if you're gonna get drafted, and you know you're gonna get drafted. Now, for guys who go undrafted, that's just, and you're like on the cut like a Gary Johnson, then it's just heartbreaking. Yeah. Like Gary Johnson watching draft because he's got a draftable grade. I'm sure by at least half the teams out there, but it was going to be a late pick anyway. So for him watching it is a heart-wrenching kind of thing to go through. I knew I was going to be drafted. For guys who are in my position, I would recommend just make sure that you are informed about the draft. But man, hang out with your friends and your family and those who have been, supporting you throughout this entire adventure, and enjoy their time and enjoy the fact that your dream is now about to come true, and just start thinking about, all right, now how do I make this dream a profession? How do I make it a career for myself? And I think I got in a bad headspace about it. And I think that's, don't watch the draft like that.
I'll tell you who took your advice, or who took before you gave it out, took your advice. Chris Boyd. Chris Boyd was a guy that knew he was going to get picked somewhere.
I'm going to get picked somewhere.
And this is when he got the call from the Vikings when he went in the 7th round. I was in the backyard throwing the football, and all of a sudden I got a phone call, and I looked and it said Minnesota. I just said, I'm about to get drafted. I said it so nonchalant that my friends were laughing, asking why I said it like that.
There you go.
Like, I guess I'm about to get drafted.
Hanging out with his friends, throwing the ball. Like, that's what I would recommend. If I could do it all over again, I'd go do something simple, man. Like, me and my boys would go, maybe we'd go bowling or something and have the draft on. You know what I mean? Like, Like, it would be something else instead of just the whole experience revolves around us watching the draft and where I'm going to get drafted. Because in the end, it wasn't totally about me. Like, I was in moms and pops was in on that, and big bro was in on that, and best friends. Like, that was part of and Sims and C-Red and my teammates. Like, that was an experience for everybody to share. So, I didn't like my draft day experience. So I'd recommend for the guys, do it a little bit differently.
Well, Rod, no matter where you get drafted, to hear your name called, you're always a part of history. And two Texas guys are now a part of this 2019 draft for forever and ever.
Congrats, fellas.
And you're the resident Houston Texans expert.
Charles Aminu was like, he's family, man. Now, like twice.
And this is really weird. And I didn't ask Charles or hear him. I don't know if he went to when Houston had their area workout for area guys. I don't know if he went, but if he did, that would be weird because that's kind of how Deontay Foreman got drafted a few years ago. He just showed up at the local kind of area workout and worked out, and they decided to go ahead and take him. And Rod, I guess
we talked about this.
There's a couple different ways to look at. There's a couple different ways to look at it. I know you can get into the Texans D-line situation because there's a lot of buzz that they might just be content to let Jadeveon Clowney walk after this year. So just kind of restocking the cupboard, just bodies along the defensive line trying to find something. But I think at that point, if you're the Texans, and I know because I'm a Cowboys fan, found the Cowboys draft. The Cowboys did this with a couple of their picks.
Yeah, they like that.
If you get into the 5th round, and I don't know where the Texans had Charles Omenihu graded, but if you've got a 3rd or 4th round grade on a guy and you're picking in the 5th round, hell, at that point you might just say, let's just trust the board and take the best guy available. And I don't know if he was that guy for the Texans or if it was partially me.
In the 5th round, he might have been.
Yeah.
Like in the 5th round, because, listen, if it is not for the deepest D-line draft in the history of the NFL, arguably this past year, Charles Omenihu was probably a 3rd round pick and maybe even sneaks into the 2nd round somewhere.
Probably. I think third round safely, yeah.
Yeah.
LJ Collier went the 1st.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It can happen. Teams just fall in love with a guy, especially if he's a freak. He looks like a freak. And Charles Omenihu looks like a freak. You know what I mean? He's got long arms, and he's long in range. He reminds me of Simeon Rice. And he did work out for the Texans privately before the draft. So I don't know if he went to like the regional workout they had.
Probably not. I mean, Deontay was down the street, so it was just kind of like, and I think Armani was in the same workout.
And Charles Omenihu like grew up in the Dallas area, but he was born in Houston. Is that what I heard?
Then went to Raleigh.
Yeah, so okay, so yeah, all right. So I knew I heard something like that. He at least had like family there or something like that. So yeah, I think it's a great value pick for the Texans. The Texans obviously are not sure if they want to marry Jadeveon Clowney. If not, if they were sure about that, they'd have worked out a contract already because they know the parameters of that deal. DeMarcus Lawrence has got his deal done. You just saw Frank Edwards sign a deal. Frank Clark signed a deal. You saw Trey Flowers sign a deal. So all those defensive ends, those pass rushers, we know where Jadeveon Clowney's going to be slotted. He's not going to get paid more than DeMarcus Lawrence. So I
didn't think Frank Clark was going to get paid more than DeMarcus Lawrence, but at least to your point, the market is set for Jadeveon Clowney.
So they don't want to make that deal with him right now. So they'd rather franchise him. He's upset about that. He won't sign the franchise tender, and he's threatening not to even play, take the Le'Veon Bell route potentially if they franchise him. So maybe that marriage is over.
Yeah,
there's some people saying they should trade
Frank
him.
Clark. And that's what I've heard.
They said they're open to trading him. What a report is that they're open to trading.
And then that there were multiple teams also interested, obviously, in him. That if some team had the cap space for the sign and trade, the same way Frank Clark did, whenever Omenihu ended up there, I was like, oh, that's definitely what they're at least had that option.
And if some team wants to do it, they do it this year while he's still cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can get it for 1 year and then sign him to another
just
deal.
Like what Clark did.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So because I think that Clark deal was on top of the deal that he has this year. So I'm with you. I think the Texans may end up moving on from Jadeveon Clowney, but only if they really like, maybe the way Charles Omenihu is working out. They still got Whitney Merciless too. I mean, they got multiple pass rushers. They got J.J. Watt, of course. Then they got Whitney Merciless. Then they got Clowney. They've drafted on that defensive line. They got Benardrick McKinney on that defensive front, I should say. They drafted Benardrick McKinney in the linebacker spot, Zach Cunningham. So they're loaded on the front seven. I'm not gonna say they can afford to lose Clowney. You need 2 bookend pass rushers. Look what the Cowboys did in getting Robert Quinn. You need somebody to complement that war daddy you have. But you can go draft that guy. Hell, they probably should have. This year they probably should try to trade Jadeveon in this draft and try to get draft picks so you can draft his replacement in this really deep D-line draft.
And that's what I heard.
That's probably what you should have did. Try to get another first round pick with Jadeveon, like Kansas.
Well, and I heard they were doing that.
Like Seattle did.
And I did hear that Clowney was one on day 2. People were asking what would be the big name if there was going to be a trade. And they said, don't rule out Jadeveon Clowney being moved. But that's the furthest you ever heard of it, is people just speculating that this would be a good move if they are at this point in their career, because why not try to get something back for him if you're either hitting that tipping point of his last year or an upset version of him. Either way, that means he wouldn't be there for the next year.
Yeah, but just like it pushes Charles Omenihu's draft value down, it depresses the D-line free market value. And Ndamukong Suh's still out there. Muhammad Wilkerson's still out there. I mean, there are a lot of really good defensive ends out there that people are just kind of looking over because this draft is so loaded. You know what I mean?
So, Rod, let me ask you this with Charles Omenihu. We talked about maybe his NFL rookie year is the redshirt year he didn't get at Texas, where you can maybe stash him away a little bit. I mean, he'll make the 53. Maybe he's not a guy that's active on the 46 every Sunday. So maybe he's a guy that's just, okay, let's let him get in the weight room, just get big, learn our system, and then year 2, maybe he's ready to take off. Is Houston, from what you're saying, and you know the Texans' D-line depth more than I do, is that a good spot for him to do that?
Yeah, they have that luxury. They do. They have so many. They're so deep there on the defensive front that they have the luxury of just having a project And that's what he can become for them, literally a project.
Mm-hmm.
And they love the fact that, he's versatile. Showed that at Texas. He can play, that if you need him to play a 3-4 DN and you can stand him up, he can put his hand in the dirt. I mean, he's so versatile. That's what the Texans want. That's how they move Jadeveon Clowney around a lot. Not saying they're going to make him Jadeveon. They can't do that because Jadeveon's a physical freak of nature. But Charles Minhew's got his own physical freakishness. And I think the Texans, with Romeo Crennel, he knows how to use really, really unique players like a guy like Charles Minhew. So I think they're in the perfect spot. Perfect spot for Charles Minhew, man. No doubt. He's going to kill it there.
Okay, so we talked about Chris Boyd a little bit ago. Let's talk about Chris Boyd in terms of his chances to make the Vikings roster. And Rod, the Minnesota Vikings, they love them some Texas DBs. Jerry Gray is the DBs coach there. Mm-hmm. They signed Duke Thomas after his run in the AAF. We saw what Holton Hill did last year. And keep in mind, Holton Hill suspended for the first 4 games of the 19 season. Yeah.
I thought it was going to be substance abuse. PED?
Which is a little different than what we thought.
But if he isn't in that other system, that actually might be okay.
I get you're right. Maybe they're like, he didn't make the same mistake. It's a different mistake.
That's one way to look at it.
Yeah, I guess so.
But we know the Vikings, Mike Zimmer, Jerry Gray, they love Texas DBs.
Yeah, well, Zimmer likes DBs. Zimmer knows how to use DBs anyway. That's a good place to be. And, of course, Jerry Gray goes without saying.
And, we know the Vikings, look, with Harrison Smith, that they've got some veteran safeties. And I know they drafted Chris Boyd as a corner, but, Rod, you've talked about, and I think that's probably the path for Chris Boyd to have a sustained career in the league is to make that conversion to safety. Again, it seems like a deal where, maybe he makes your 53. It's different for a defensive back because he can be a core special teams guy. We know Chris Boyd with the size-speed ratio could cover kicks, be a gunner, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Be a hold-up guy on the gunner kickoff.
So, and honestly, Chris Boyd would be, based on service time, would be cheaper than even a guy like Duke Thomas, a veteran that's fighting to make the roster.
This is true.
So maybe Chris Boyd's NFL dream is at the expense of Duke Thomas's continuing. We'll see how that plays out in camp, but Rod, do you like this pick for the Vikings to take Chris Boyd?
Yeah, it's a good pick for him. And if you want to go somewhere where it's possible you could be an experiment, where they're trying to turn you into something, and say they are looking at him to be, those big nickel packages that they play now in the NFL that are so popular, where they play 3 safeties. But they're non-traditional safety. That's what Quandre Diggs does with the Lions. Matt Patricia plays a lot of big nickel, and he wants to utilize 3 different safeties. But those guys have to be able to cover. That's the key, all right. Especially in a league that is spreading guys out and using mismatches, especially in the slot. And that Chris Boyd as a safety, he can cover probably as good as most safeties. You know what I mean? And as a corner, his coverage skills are can be a liability at times, especially when you're talking about playing with your back to the football. So I want to know how they're going to use him. I mean, and he could be a guy who just kind of manufactures depth for you. Maybe he's a guy that ends up playing a lot of different spots for you. And that's also something that NFL teams love. That's how they fall in love with guys who can manufacture depth, add value to the roster. So I don't know. We'll see what they use Chris Boyd for. We don't really know. If they put him at corner, I think he has less of a chance to make that roster at corner. He has more of a chance to make the roster if they decide, all right, we're going to do more with him than Jim just be a cover corner. All right, we're going to use him in different ways because he is a really good football player. Right. I mean, that's why he's good at coming down against the run. He's really aggressive against the run. Even his bump and run at the line of scrimmage, he's actually pretty good in bump and run technique.
Xavier Rhodes is a really good bump and run guy, and I think you could see those same type of skills as a tool to back that guy up and see what he turns into.
Yeah, and they play a lot of that too in Minnesota. So Minnesota's got great safety play.
Harrison Smith.
Yeah, exactly. So their corners can be, opportunistic. So I just want to know how they're going to use him. His chances of making that squad, as anybody's chance of making a squad, are better the more he can do.
Yeah, I like that he landed there. And whenever I just Googled, because I didn't know about Holton Hill, and I just wanted to see, what the story was on him. But this next sentence, after Holton Hill being suspended for performance-enhancing drug policy, and said the Vikings had 2 players each pinned with the suspension last year. Linebacker Kentrell Brothers and wide receiver Caleb Jones.
Oh,
Caleb Jones! The Vikings back-to-back Longhorn PEDs, Caleb Jones and Holton Hill in back-to-back seasons.
Caleb Jones.
I forgot about that guy.
Caleb Jones was in Texas for 1 year.
I know. It just Texas fans. It made me laugh.
Well, he's an Austinite too.
Yeah, Austin High.
Yeah.
And his brother Zay Jones was at East Carolina and with the.
Is he still with Buffalo?
Yeah, he actually put up some good numbers with stuff.
He had the deal last offseason, yeah.
But that was because Caleb was going to jump out a window.
No, that was Zay's deal.
Yeah.
I think that was Zay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, either way, that one, he actually...
I think Caleb was there.
He was there.
He produced very well with Buffalo by the end of the year. Bought him in some daily fantasy.
There you go. So, Rod, I mean, I guess it's safe to say Charles Omenihu's going to be on the 53 for Houston in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no guarantee that Chris Boyd's going to make. They got talented DBs. Holton Hill made as an undrafted free agent, though. He's a priority free agent, undrafted free agent, but so there's a chance. And you know what? And if he doesn't, I think they would put him on practice. So I think worst case scenario for Chris Boyd, they put him on practice squad because he is a guy that's kind of a raw athlete. And, 1 off season or training camp at corner, they're not going to be able to see enough. He's not going to get enough reps for them to get a really, really thorough evaluation. So again, practice squad.
I just look at this Texas draft class, especially those guys that were true seniors that were in that 2015 recruiting class. Chris Boyd, Charles Omenihu, P.J. Locke, even Brecken Hager. Guys played really before they should have.
Charlie had to.
Yeah, exactly. They
After
were playing out of necessity, and
that's the purge and everything. The roster was depleted.
That's the difference we talk about now with Tom Herman and Charlie Strong. Tom Herman's now playing freshman because this guy's just better than everybody else.
Caden Stern's just that damn good.
Right.
Keontae Ingram's that good.
And Vance Bedford even said, they wanted a redshirt Charles Omenihu, but they didn't have anybody else D-line wise. They could do what they wanted, so they had to play him.
It's a great point. I mean, and we've talked about this on the show plenty of times, so we don't want to talk too much of Charlie, but Charlie played more freshmen than any other coach in the history of Texas football.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right? I mean, and I know it was like, when you think about it.
Post-Mac.
Well, not even post-Mac. He played way more than Mac. I mean, he set the...
No, I'm saying post-Mac. I mean, his guys. He's playing his freshmen.
Yeah, no doubt. But he had to after Mac. He's cleaning up the program, and then the purge where he, I don't know, what was it mean? 14 players, something, end up being dismissed.
I like to forget.
Yeah, exactly. But either way, it wasn't just those 14 players, but as we all know, they were a lot of those guys were like veterans. They were older guys. Now, they weren't all marquee guys that were starters, but they were going to be that, as you call that, talented depth on your roster. You know what I mean?
You start taking away Joe Bergeron, a Leroy Scott,
and
Jalen Overstreet.
And what people don't understand is that's also the competition within the positions. You know what I mean? Like those guys who have been, they create the competition. That's how the young guys get better. You know what I mean? That's how Caden Stearns is going to get better. That's how Keontae Ingram's going to get better. I need somebody over here, a vet, to challenge him. You know what I mean? Yeah. And bring out the best in that youngster. And all that plays a role. And it unfortunately for Charlie, man, it came back to haunt him, but it ended up helping Tom Herman because all those really, really young guys had a ton of reps and a ton of experience by the time Tom Herman came along in 2017, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because that's what Charlie knew.
Yeah, we could get into this maybe this summer when we
I know we
got
get
downtime. But to me, the fundamental difference between Charlie Strong and Tom Herman is Tom Herman's been proactive in terms of, okay, here's what my roster is going to look like. Where do I need to plug holes with a JUCO guy? Go get a grad transfer
right now,
something, and be proactive and go get that guy. So maybe you're not getting a priority target, but maybe you're getting somebody else, or it's having the foresight to say, okay, we know in this recruiting class, I need 2 guys that can be versatile enough to play running back or slot.
Yeah.
Or I need a safety corner. I need a guy who can be a 3 technique or a 4. I need that. You need to recruit some versatility. Tom Herman's been much more forward thinking in terms of how he's building his roster.
Yeah.
Where it seemed like Charlie Strong was like, hell, just bring in talent. Just bring in these players. And look, this is the other thing I was going to talk about with this draft class, Rod. You look at where some of these guys were ranked and the fact that who was drafted, who were priority free agents. The one thing you can give Charlie Strong, they did a hell of a job evaluating prospects, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
I think the defense side of the ball is key. What ended up hurting Charlie Strong is that, and this goes back to Tom Herman and his vision that you talked about. Offensively, 2 years ago, we're talking about what a dumpster fire the offense is, and the offensive identity crisis exists at every position, especially quarterback. And now that doesn't exist on the 40 acres anymore.
Right.
He came in with a plan to fix that offense. I mean, it wasn't, you could tell, you could almost detail it and go make a timeline how he came in and literally addressed every position and seemed to be continuously upgrading it. And on defense for Charlie, I think his mentality of just bring in talent, we're going to bring in talent, it materialized on defense because that's what he knows. He knows defense really well.
But you've also talked too, defense is that's where you need players.
You need talent. Exactly. You can't, there's no scheme that's going to uplift your play and make you a better defense. It doesn't exist really. I'm sorry. Like, for the most part, if you're a good defense, you got talent on that defense. That's what's going on. Offensively, hell, man, you can have no NFL prospects on offense, have the best offense in college football. It's happened before here in the Big 12. All right, so I think for Charlie, when the Big 12 started, throwing them haymakers at him, when all these great offense, he was in there with Browns, and think about how good that offense was in the Big 12 when Charlie had to reinvent the program and go up against it. It was the air raid offense.
Lincoln Riley comes into the league.
You got Dana Holgerson over there, Cliff Kingsbury. He's a scrub at Texas Tech. You know what I mean? Like, what? I mean, Charlie couldn't handle it, and no matter how much talent he put on that defense, it wasn't. You couldn't do anything about it. And even Todd Orlando, with all that NFL talent he had on that defense, we saw him take a couple of haymakers.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best defensive minds in the country. So it is the conference to a certain extent. You got to fix that offense. And Charlie didn't prioritize that. Playing great defense, it only gets you so far. Exactly. That's Gary Patterson in the Big 12. Gary Patterson, he acquiesced at one point. He was like, all right, well, hell, I'm a great defensive mind, but I got to go hire me an air raid guy.
We got to score.
We got to score some points. I'm losing games. And we're, you know what I mean?
I'm holding defense.
I'm holding guys to 28 points, and we're losing games. So we got to score points. So I think Charlie didn't recognize that quickly enough.
Right.
Tom Herman's like, oh yeah, well, but he's an offensive guy, so it helps him. But he's got his soulmate, his counterpart in Todd Orlando.
But if you look at
Charlie, never had that in an offensive guy. No. Never.
Right. You start looking at defensive personnel though, Rod, and you start looking at how many of those guys in the 2015 class were kind of like value 3-star guys with Charles Omenihu, PJ Locke, and Brecken Hager, and to develop those guys to where some of them are draft picks, some of them are priority free agents. I don't know that Texas, especially Tom Herman, since those guys got their last 2 years with this regime, I don't know that they're getting enough credit for how you've gotten the absolute most. Like, I think you can say they probably got the most they could out of Brecken Hager.
Yeah.
They got the most they could out of PJ Locke.
Yeah.
They ended up getting the most out of Charles Omenihu. You can look on this defense in 2019 and say, you're probably going to end up getting the most out of Malcolm Roach. Gary Johnson, they got the most out of a guy like Gary Johnson. They got Malik Jefferson and Deshaun Elliott to leave Texas having played their best football.
Yeah, that's one of the trends for Todd Orlando. If you go back and look under Todd Orlando, and it's easy to track because he's only had 2-year stops at every place other than UConn going back to 2010. Every play, I'm not joking. I would say close to 80 to 90% of the players who ended up getting drafted or becoming free agents in the league had their best years under Todd Orlando.
Yeah, and their schools had their best production ever. UConn did stuff with their defensive players they had never done before.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Go look at U of H. Go look at Utah State. The high level guys, the guys who actually have an NFL ceiling or can be an NFL prospect, had their best years on Orlando, and that even is for the the guys at U of H when he leaves and they have great years as sophomores. They're not as good after he leaves in a new system. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I mean, I'll probably go track it over the off season when I get bored. But I started that research and it's true. And here you can see it real time. Like all those guys had their best years under Orlando. We watched these guys. Holden Hill, if he doesn't end up getting suspended, Holden Hill's probably a first team All-American corner. He was on that kind of pace.
He was a second, third round talent easily.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like he was. I'm talking about
should have been drafted.
Yeah, no doubt. But obviously things happen. Malik Jefferson. I remember the questions about him, but Orlando was able to get the best out of him. Puna Ford ended up becoming a force of nature. Yeah, I mean all these guys, and we had seen them grow up and play before. But Todd Orlando weaponizes players, and he did it with Brecken Hager for a while, and PJ Locke, I think, is another guy, too. So I agree with you.
And once he left Houston, I mean, I was sort of surprised only because I never paid attention to the criticism around Houston's program post-Herman. But then hearing the NFL people talk about what they were doing with Ed Oliver in that defense the last 2 years compared to what he was with that baseline right at the beginning of his career at Houston, I was surprised to hear how bad, I guess, it had gotten there post-Orlando.
Yeah.
But I'm going back and look at the 2015 recruiting class. You look at the 24/7 Sports composite rankings and where some of these guys were ranked. 3-star prospect, number 426 overall in the country, that was Connor Williams. Number 430 overall, 3-star prospect, that was Charles Omenihu. 3 of your 5 lowest rated qualifying signees in that 2015 class, PJ Locke, Brecken Hager, Michael Dixon.
That's what we've been asking for a decade. If you can go and get those 2 stars and 3 stars and 4 stars to produce at that level of a college contributor or NFL starter, then you have your big you aren't going to miss on those 5 stars, and that's what we saw when we talked about those bust rates and those great classes from 02 to 05, and what was the difference makers, and it was maximizing the low end guys because those top end guys, and not everybody's going to be wrong on that.
I'm glad you mentioned bust rate, Matt, because I need to, because as you know,
you're gonna update your
well,
notebook.
yeah,
you're unzipping stuff right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Well, I'm gonna have to update it because we've got pretty much. The only guys that are gonna be on this roster in 2019 from the 2015 class that still have eligibility are John Burton, Kirk Johnson, and I don't think it's pretty safe to say we would be surprised if either one of those guys got drafted. I mean, they would have to have surprisingly monster years.
Agreed. At least you've had one contributor.
This 2015 class. It produced 6 draft picks.
Yeah.
And I got to go back and find the last Texas class. Excuse me, everybody watching or listening to this. I got to go back and find the last time a Texas class produced that many draft picks. You're looking at...
It means a ways back
if
you're continuing to flip pages.
All of those, but was it you said 6 draft picks?
From one recruiting
class? But 5 of those are on defense, right?
Yeah.
4 on defense and 1 special team?
Well, 4 defense, 1 specialist, 1 offense.
Yeah.
So at least 6 is getting to a good number.
I think you could be dealing with an aberration, too, when there's Charlie Strong. And like we just talked about, he's just really good at evaluating talent. And all those guys played early. So they had a chance to put a lot of film out there. A ton of film. Think about how much film those guys put out there. Name those guys again. Connor Williams, true freshman starting. Malik Jefferson, true freshman starting.
Deshaun Elliott. Deshaun Elliott's the only one that group that really didn't.
Yeah, you're right. Deshaun Elliott took a little while. He got some. I think he started like 2 games
recruit.
that year or something.
Michael Dixon.
Punter.
Charles Minahu.
Holden Hill wasn't in that group.
No, because Holden Hill wasn't drafted.
He wasn't drafted, but he's in that class.
Oh, see, that's where it's a very, very good
and that's
class.
where the free agent. Well, obviously,
and that's where like Texas's lack of success is an issue.
I mean, go look at this class. This class of undrafted free agents, though. I'm not joking. It's got a chance to rival that 2014 class of undrafted free agents.
Gary Johnson, Calvin Anderson.
Johnson going to the Chiefs. Lil Jordan Humphrey to the Saints. Andrew Beck and Calvin Anderson to the Patriots. Chris Nelson to the Steelers, Patrick Vahe to the Ravens, Devontae Davis to the
those 6 are perfect. Those
Anthony
are all where
Wheeler to
go.
the Cardinals, and Breckenhager to the Giants, Elijah Rodriguez to the Saints too, and PJ Locke to the Steelers. Man, that's a lot of opportunity. What is that?
And look at those roots, though,
and
man.
there's only, I believe, Rodriguez, Vahe, and Wheeler. I believe those are the only 3. I believe those are the only 3 that are like rookie camp tryout deals. Everybody else got legitimate
like a priority
free agent contract.
And this was when I saw this list
so
of
only the offensive linemen didn't get.
Would that have been the 2 linemen and Wheeler? Yeah,
2 linemen and Wheeler. Okay.
But when you saw these names starting to feed out, it almost fit like say what would be a script. It was like, okay, where does Gary Johnson go? Oh, the place where the organization that drafted DJ. Where does Chris Nelson go? He goes to the organization that drafted Casey Hampton. You look at the Patriots. Well, what would they need? A good, smart Rice left tackle, or a guy that's, say, a good hybrid, blocking, tight end, pass catching threat. That's Andrew Beck. And then even Devontae Davis. Oh, well, what were we saying? He was the next mold up was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you just look across the board. It almost fits like exactly where you would have thought. And then, of course, Lil Jordan going to the Saints, and where he could be just a perfect piece for Breeze to have a target, one of those big rangy guys that we talk about that are those pass catching hybrid wide receiver tight ends.
The last recruiting class Texas had, this just kind of weird to show you kind of what the anomaly is in this decade, this 2015 class is.
Yeah.
The last class Texas had before this that produced 6 draft picks.
At least 6. How many?
How about the 2005 recruiting class?
And that's for
Colt McCoy, Roy Miller, Henry Melton, Roderick Muckleroy, Jamal Charles, Jermichael Finley.
And
well, look how much to your point, Rod, how much balance you got in that class. That's quarterback, D-line, running back, tight end, linebacker.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think, that was Texas still in their heyday. Well, not in the prime of their heyday, actually. So, I wonder if this
was pound for pound Mac Brown's best.
And that was the class, though, we talked about him.
In terms of bust rate and NFL
maximizing low-end recruits. No doubt. And that's sort of where at least it's
sort of... that was a small recruiting class, was it not?
15 signees, and your bust rate was only 20%.
Yeah, that was a small... So you had to hit on them, too. It wasn't like you just got in a lot of them, and it was... No, you had to get into the quality of that.
And I mean, you talk about Colt McCoy, Roy Miller, like I said, Roderick Muckleroy, Jamal Charles, You're talking about guys that played a long time in the NFL. They were
Exactly.
captains or they were all Americans.
Yeah. So to me, that's why. So I'm not saying Charlie's class is, man, that's not. It's something that's not real. It's a fugazi. But I do wonder if it's an aberration because it's so lopsided defensively in the Big 12, which is a offensive-oriented league. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like
at least it's good, but it's not where you want it to.
Weird.
Yeah.
The NFL doesn't respect defense in the Big 12. They literally don't respect it.
Right.
Except for Texas.
You know what I mean? No, they respect certain coaches. That's why Gary Patterson, I think, can get a defensive player drafted that nobody expects in the first round. Did the Big 12 have any other defensive players drafted in the first round?
Oh, no.
No, right?
No, it was Kyler Murray, Hollywood Brown,
Okay.
and I believe L.J. Collier were the three.
Okay.
So it speaks volumes to
so
Texas
I think that was
to
just
get
Garrett
players.
Patterson. I think it's a respect for him.
And that's where it speaks volumes, though, also to Texas, that if inside that type of a culture, you still are viewed as a place where the NFL is going to go and get talent. So that's sort of a good thing to have.
No doubt. Oh, the Big 12 has talent. I mean, that's why if I track the undrafted free agents on defense in the NFL, no.
Yeah, value.
Yeah, the NFL. I bet they have a lot of undrafted free agents.
Hills,
Big 12 does in on defense in the NFL, but they just didn't feel like they were draftable because that's about value, and they don't see the NFL. The NFL doesn't see Big 12 defense as having value. It's delegitimized.
Yeah, I know Oklahoma State's had some guys over the years.
Yeah,
it's like Texas is the only
the Big 12 defensive lineman of the year last year was undrafted. People, Punafort he's the defensive lineman of the year in the conference,
and he dominated once he got in there.
This year was 5th round pick. All right, like they don't really respect defense in the Big 12.
They love Puna up in Seattle. He has his own fan base, the Puna Hive.
Does he really?
Yes.
I believe that.
Now, you take Tony Jefferson from Oklahoma as a perfect example, Rod. He's carved out a nice career for himself. He was undrafted.
Yeah.
Good player. Was he with the Cardinals now?
Cardinals. He's with the Ravens now.
Ravens now.
Yeah, Cardinals for a while.
Oh, a Sooner and a Longhorn are the two safeties there?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. No, Longhorn fans wouldn't like that.
There's a lot of them.
But no, I think this free agent class is going to be good. My two top wants to stick. I'm going to still go with Gary. Well, now, of course, Gary Johnson. He's my top guy. Lil Jordan Humphrey. And I agree with Matt. Man, he landed in a perfect spot because you're talking about a offensive mind that utilizes unique skills, right? Like, or skill sets like Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill. And he loves guys that are kind of these unicorns. Where they're just matchup nightmares. He loves these hybrids and physical freaks. Everybody else shies away from him. He's like, no. That guy, I'm going to get him matched up on somebody, and he's going to be a nightmare. So for a guy like Lil Jordan Humphrey, ideally, I would like him to get like just 1 year in a practice squad with the Saints, and then just kind of see if there's a role he can mimic within that offense. But I wouldn't doubt if Sean Payton falls in love with him and makes a role for him like he did at Taysom Hill or like he did Alvin Kamara. I know that sounds crazy. Like, man, that's really me thinking really highly of Lil Jordan Humphrey. Yeah. But I think once they see him in a training camp, they'll see what we saw and go, just put him in the slot as a flex tight end and let him work.
Did you see that at the end of the playoffs? I mean, when they had Dan Arnold, Josh Hill, and Garrett Griffin, who had been cut from the Texans, and those three guys literally moved the ball up because, I mean, you're going to attract all your attention to the other guys. Well, Breeze is going to be able to find the 4th and 5th option that's 6'6" and it plays above a plane. And that's literally... Right now, Lil Jordan Humphrey, he is way more athletic than what I saw from Josh Hill and Dan Arnold last year. And those guys were very serviceable and were there. One or the other was on the field almost every play for the Saints.
But, Rod, this just kind of goes back to where the program is. And I know, a lot of people had fun kind of poking the bear at Texas over the weekend. Like, Texas only had 2 guys drafted, blah, blah. Well, either you're just lazy and didn't do your homework or you're just content to try to poke the bear and come up with the hot take and
There's a reason for it. There's a reason, yeah.
But when you start looking at the undrafted free agents that Texas has put out in recent years, Rod, you talked about it, I've talked about it. I mean, Texas has kind of become a gold mine. I mean, you start going down the list.
No school in the country, and this is like, I'm not going to brag about this, but it's not me bragging. No school in the country is producing undrafted free agents at the rate that Texas is right now that are making rosters. And that is because we're one of the only blue bloods who is failing to develop our high-end talent.
Yes. Right. Hence that report or whatever Chris Summer did with those numbers last week.
247 Sports.
Yeah, we talked about it last week.
From 2010 2014, Texas only developed 10% of their 4- and 5-star players into being draftable
of their top
NFL
247 guys, 38.
And that's the worst, by the way, of all the blue bloods, and probably the worst of all the Power 5
Fives that
of
get
the 20 of the 29 ranked. Texas was 29th.
Yeah, Pretty much. Yeah. So the worst blue blood in terms of producing their maximizing their NFL talent.
Hence 3 coaches in 5 years.
And there's a different way to look. There's 2 sides to that though. You can look at draft picks, but I also look at guys like I just mentioned with a Charles Omenihu, with a guy like Connor Williams, who was a valued 3-star guy. This program actually has done a really good job, even during the Charlie Strong era, of getting the most out of guys that you probably on signing day, you're like, okay, maybe he's a starter or whatever. In Connor Williams' case, I knew we just underranked him and probably should have ranked him higher than we did. But it's taking these guys that on a national recruiting list, you're like, okay, that guy's a top 400, top 500 type guy, and getting them to their ceiling. Deontay Foreman, I think, was the second lowest rated guy in the 2014 class.
He
was a throw in with their money.
I was gonna say, I remember people saying
he was just throw in. Well, I'll take that throw in. Doak Walker Award winner every single week.
Team Foreman,
and that's the main thing with Texas. We're so frustrated at the end of the Mac era was the evaluation process really seemed to just sort of not evolved with the times, because you had 2 decades spanning and things were much different, and that's what caused me to start that bust rate stuff and looking at these things in 07, 08, 09 was just sort of laying that foundation of mediocrity. So then if you continue to not have anything until like 11, 12 is when you get that Quandre and Jackson as young players. And that was sort of the last hurrah from Mac. And like, it was a really good chance with the new
Jordan
staff. And you started to see a little revitalization, but you didn't win. And then we've just been dealing with no continuity since then. So it's finally now you're getting some of those guys that were the diamonds in the rough that you actually are able to evaluate and see something in, or you come in and develop them, and now you're starting to see that become like the standard. And if you can have that fill your whole 85 roster and don't have these holes or attrition from one coach leaving or from trouble and all these other things that we brought out, that a lot of the things that make these guys be undrafted free agents, yet they're still the talent because you're Texas, and that's what makes you so happy to be a Texas fan, because you know Texas is going to get the talent. You just have to actually produce some winning on the field with it.
Yeah, and Rod, I want to get back to your point real quick earlier about this program being lopsided, the number of NFL guys it produces on defense. You realize we've had 9 seasons in this current decade, 9 drafts. Do you know how many offensive guys have been drafted?
Oh, this is a good question. Okay,
how many guys on offense have been drafted? You're one off. You're one off.
Really?
4.
I got Swaim, I got Connor Williams, I got Marquise Goodwin. Who am I missing?
Deontay Foreman.
How could I miss Deontay?
We just talked about
I'm just
him.
too close to him, yeah. Damn, that's it?
Yeah. But when you start running down the priority free agents, guys that have stuck around, guys that have made they spent at least 1 year on a practice squad or made more of their career. I mean, Chris Warren had just a weird ending to his senior year.
But a physical freak.
Right. Tyrone Swoop's position changed. Kent Perkins, he's stuck with the Bengals for a couple of years now. Donald Hawkins was on a few different teams. Marcus Johnson has a Super Bowl ring. Jackson Shipley hung around the league. Trey Hopkins, I believe, still on the roster for the Bengals. So you start looking at some of these guys that have been, again, priority free agents. Quan Cosby falls into that category. Let's see. I'm trying to find. David Snow was a guy that hung around the league for a while. James Kirkendall did. Kyle Hicks has a Super Bowl ring with the Patriots. Fozzie Whitaker. I believe Fozzie's still in the league or transitioning.
He might be transitioning. He was last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he might be because he's doing more like
and
LHN
then you
stuff,
get into Quan Cosby. Yeah, Quan stuck around the league for a few years after not getting drafted. So, yeah, I mean, it's like, back to your point, Malcolm Brown's a guy I didn't mention on there, but it's like all this talent on offense, it's not getting developed at Texas. The NFL saying, you know what, let me take a chance on this guy. And then for the Rams, I mean, think about this with the Rams with Malcolm Brown, as good as Todd Gurley and C.J. Anderson was. Malcolm Brown signs an offer sheet with the Lions. The Rams think enough of him. Even, Rod, their salary cap numbers aren't great in terms of the wiggle room. They're
devoting a lot of money to running backs.
Yeah.
In a league where you're not supposed to.
They matched the Lions offer to Malcolm Brown and brought him back on a pretty nice deal.
No, I think because they've realized, man, if Todd Gurley is not going to work out, he's going to get hurt again this year, we'd rather have Malcolm Brown than even, what was it, C.J. Anderson?
Yeah. Well, and then, they've hit on all their draft picks that have been able to go and spend a superfluous amount of money, and now with Sue not coming back, you have a lot of cap space.
Had Malcolm Brown not gotten hurt last year, I was at a Christmas party with some mutual friends and ended up running into somebody who's a big Rams fan, and he was talking about, had Malcolm Brown not gotten hurt, I think he's going to get. I think he would make a big playoff run here. Like the Rams are really going to miss him. And then I was like, okay, whatever. Maybe this guy's just talking up because he knows I cover Texas. But then you start looking at C.J. Anderson. You're like, man, that would have been Malcolm Brown.
That would have been Malcolm Brown.
Well, and all season long,
Malcolm Brown would have been better than CJ.
And he was taking snaps away from Gurley all season just because they knew that you can't just grind him away. But he also was earning them, like, at one point at Gurley's career, and probably learned it early the year before because he dealt with injuries. But whenever you're able to go and get onto the field with a player that is that elite, Malcolm Brown was an afterthought that just sort of grounded out and earned his way there.
No, it basically all that comes down to is the offensive identity crisis that Texas has. It has hindered those guys' ability to maximize their draft value and to raise their draft value. So they don't get, like, Marquise Goodwin is a prime example. I always say Marquise Goodwin should have been a first round type talent. Like he was a physical freak and went to the combine around with like a 4.2 or something like that. And where did he go? The second or the third round? Third round.
Third.
Man, that guy should have been a Biletnikoff Award finalist at least.
Now he's with your boy Shano and a really big part of what they're doing.
Oh, yeah, because my point was Texas couldn't weaponize him well enough.
The ball wasn't on the right hash mark, right?
Exactly. So when you have the offensive identity crisis, I think that's what you have, that sliding scale of development or lack thereof. And I think all those guys on offense, they're the ones who had to pay the price for it. But you see, there's been talent here at Texas. The talent pool didn't stop. It didn't decrease. It wasn't depleted. It wasn't diminished. No, we stopped developing the talent that was coming.
And we didn't have.
That's what happened.
Yes, and
now the numbers all say that. So if you're saying like, Texas just wasn't recruiting talent, well then you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Well, and Texas didn't understand
in
football.
Tons of talent.
And at the time,
wasn't developing. Mac, I loved Mac back then, but I wanted him at my wedding, but not the coach of my football team.
Not right now,
I wouldn't say that now because now Mac has learned. Now go look at Mac savvy now. Mac admitted I learned a lot when I was sitting back on the sidelines interviewing people, and now he's a much savvier coach. I think now he's taking more chances. He's more innovative, and now I think more creative on offense. All that stuff.
Have I shared this? I'm going to cut you off, Rob, but this backs up your point about Mac, and I don't want to turn this into a Mac Brown podcast, but I think it was Mac's second year out. I saw him at the Alamo Bowl. The Oregon TCU Alamo Bowl.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of a brief. We just kind of caught up for a few seconds. And he was working the game. Yeah, I think he was doing ESPN Radio maybe.
Okay.
And John Mandani was there because John does work with ESPN Radio. And we start talking about Mac. He's like, Jeff, I'm telling you, he's like, I don't think he's done because I see him going around and talking to these coaches, and he's making notes. I wouldn't be shocked if he's putting a staff together. He's really trying to figure out kind of where this thing is going, what he did wrong. He's like, I'm not going to be shocked at all if in a year or two Mac Brown's back coaching.
He needed that.
Yeah, he needed literally look at that tipping point of whenever, because you bringing up Marquise Goodwin made me think of that 2009, his freshman year when he had a good quarterback with Colt McCoy, but just the vision of Texas football at that point and the decision that really severed the end of that era. And it was just not going where you seen football going. And because literally it blows my mind that Garrett Gilbert's backing up Baker Mayfield now in Cleveland. And you had Marquise Goodwin, and all you had to do, you look at Garrett Gilbert, if he just would have had Kingsbury and that Tech offense in that Texas, and you probably could have streamlined the production and had a championship offense. No, exactly. That's my point. He would have had Marquise Goodwin and all this talent there, and we had it, and it was in our own backyard, but old football minds did not understand what they were seeing, and it's nothing against anybody. Your learned behavior, you know what you know, and during that decade, something had spawned that revolutionized football, and it spawned in our own backyard, and you had the best high school program to ever have it in it. A decade later,
Mike Leach was doing it at Tech, and we were laughing at him.
Yeah.
And people were scoffing at him. They thought it was gimmick football.
Well, no, that's a good old boy network.
And they spread.
Dude, it's like religion, and they did not want to let the new thoughts in, and they were going to banish all the others to hell, and they didn't want it.
No, Matt got too impressed watching Nick Saban
dominate them in that fourth quarter.
Football power running game, and he thought, "Hey, Texas can do that because Texas can do that."
And that's
but whether they should
unstoppable.
do that was a different discussion, and Max never entertained whether they should do it. He just thought, "Oh, we could do it. Yeah, you could." but you should.
Yeah, you would be
And
reinforcing
and he
the
didn't realize how long it
superfluous.
would take the program to try to go in that direction. He assumed you could just pivot course, and you cannot just pivot course, man. There's a generation
You can't
of
just
recruiting
turn it
classes,
and change what type of player you are.
Yeah, that you have to change, and he didn't realize that, and now
We got Cody Johnson.
That was a fatal flaw. It was almost, I don't know if it was arrogance. I don't know if it was, I don't know what it was. Like,
hold on.
The revolution of the spread,
like
he's been coaching college and he's seen a few things there, but to understand the future vision,
hold on.
it's hard to do that.
Can I just retell the story real quick that was told to me by a member of that coaching staff?
Do it.
When they got back from Pasadena, they had a big staff meeting where they were talking about recruiting, and they were going to get ready to host guys for the 2011 junior days for the 2011 recruiting class, and the quarterback decision was a big one that they were making at the time. And the big philosophical split was and somebody can knock this down or whatever, but this is what I was told by somebody who was in the room. Greg Davis and Mac McWhorter were on one side of the argument. Major Applewhite and Will Muschamp were on the other side.
Yeah.
Major Applewhite and Will Muschamp said, no, there's nothing wrong with what we're doing on offense.
Yeah.
Let's go recruit J.W. Walsh, who's probably the best spread quarterback in the state that we can get. And keep running it like we did with Colt, because there was a thought by both those guys. J.W. Walsh was never healthy enough at Oklahoma State for this theory to be proven. They thought J.W. Walsh was Colt McCoy with an NFL arm. They said, let's recruit him. Just keep doing what we're doing. Keep going with spread. It's fine. Mac McWhorter and Greg Davis said, no, we need to get back to I formation, running downhill, this physical power running team. This is what we need to be to take the next step. And they won the argument, apparently.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's I
remember that.
Yeah, it's.
I don't want it to make. I don't want it to sound that simple. Maybe it was more nuanced than that. But that's the gist.
No, it was a fork in the road for Texas football, and we picked the road less traveled.
Yes.
And it was not the right decision. And we paid the price for it for like 4 or 5 years.
And a decade later, the NFL's playing that style of football.
Yeah, and that's the whole point was Mac then couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly.
He was too enveloped by it. He didn't have the vision. Now that he's outside of it, on the outside looking in, he's like, oh,
damn.
Man, how did I not see that? I should. Now he's talking to Cliff Kingsbury. Now he's calling Cliff Kingsbury. Ask Cliff Kingsbury who I should hire.
Yeah. He hired Phil Longo.
He's like, you know what I mean? Like,
Phil Longo, who doesn't even run plays.
No, he's an old Miss guy, right? Yeah. So I'm saying, so now you got him going full circle, wouldn't acknowledge that Mike Leach was a revolutionary offensive mind in his own backyard, would laugh at everybody, call it gimmicky football. Now, this Mac Brown's calling Cliff Kingsbury saying, hey, who should I hire, man, my OC?
Yeah, exactly. At least, that's evolving.
Growth. That's growth by Mac, though. That's why Mac at North Carolina is going to be successful, because he grew. He's not the same Mac that he was here.
No.
Yeah, he's bringing Texas out to the East Coast. He's going to run all over those ACC teams.
Right.
And having Tim Brewster as your recruit coordinator doesn't hurt you.
Hell yeah. Ask the Aggies. It helps. They miss Brew already.
When I saw that, I was like, that's so awesome.
You
He
can
left
say what
them.
you want about Tim Brewster, damn it. That dude can recruit. You ain't gotta like him. He's kind of like James Harden. You ain't gotta like him, but he's effective as hell.
Yes.
You of all people in this room, know better than anybody.
Hey, but I beat you.
You of all people know better than anybody, Rod.
I know. I saw him flip Chris Sims from Tennessee at the time, and that was amazing.
The whole country was like, what?
And he kept saying, he's like, don't worry, we got him, Raul B. We got him, baby. I was like, he said he's committed to Tennessee. He's like, oh man, that's all a charade. That's all a charade, brother. I know Tim Brewster. God, I love that.
If you don't want to know anything else about Tim Brewster's recruiting credentials, if somebody said, why is Tim Brewster such a great recruiter? He got VY.
He got VY and Chris Sims, who are arguably the two biggest recruits that.
That's where you can just stop it and start it right there.
Yeah, VY,
done.
and he got Chris Sims. I'm with you. I think he is the best recruit in the country. And I still believe that.
Right. But, getting back to the topic at hand of the draft, Rod, when we talk about, the offense and where it's going, to me, that's really when you look at what separates Texas. Because Texas, under Mac Brown, under Tom Herman, under Charlie Strong, whoever, Texas has not had a problem recruiting, developing, and producing NFL guys on defense.
No.
The problem, as we said, has been on offense. Yep. And if you want to look at the other side of the spectrum, you go look at Oklahoma's offense this year. Your quarterback is the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
4 of your offensive linemen are drafted. The other one is still in school because he wasn't draft eligible this year.
Do they have like 8 players drafted or something like that?
Their team that played Alabama in the national semifinals, that offense is going to have all 5 offensive linemen drafted whenever Creed Humphrey decides to go.
But Rodney Anderson got drafted.
Hollywood Brown got
drafted. I want to say, he was
a lot of talent.
Yeah, it's a lot of talent.
All of their draft picks, I think it was 8 of them, all on offense.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And he's going to come back next year and still have a good offense.
But that just
because it automates itself.
But that just shows you that just proves your point.
System, though, right?
But that proves your point.
That's your
Mike Leach
baseline
system.
when
Yeah.
it's your
That
baseline.
proves your point about this league. The Big 12 is different until further notice. Oklahoma's defense was garbage. It was awful.
No.
But when you've got by far the best offense in the country, there were hell. Okay, you're going to score 55 points. Great, we'll score 60.
We're going to score every time. Like, if you can score every time, how's a team going to beat you in theory? They can't. They can only match you, and that's where you're at, and then you steal those possessions.
But that is the challenge. If you want to know where Tom Herman's got to take this thing, that is the challenge for him.
I agree.
Is to recruit, develop, and produce guys that perform at a high level on offense.
He's already starting. He's already starting with that.
Yes, and when we talk about offensive systems and schemes and what Texas was doing was outdated, and we talk about the offensive identity crisis, Rod, and as you mentioned, it's gotten fixed, and we've talked about it on the show how it's in the process of getting fixed, and last year was a big step in that direction. The pro spread is kind of the best of both worlds if you think about it. Because it's a system that's going to, as Urban Meyer has proven with the framework of the same offense, it's going to get guys ready for the NFL. But at the same time, if you find yourself in a shootout with an Oklahoma or an Oklahoma State or a West Virginia,
you can adapt it.
Yeah,
very easily.
You can go look like an air raid team and go score 45, 50 points.
Totally agree. Yeah, I know, I agree. And I think the offensive linemen that are now starting. We got 3 offensive linemen that either got a training camp. They got themselves a training camp tryout.
Well, 3 guys on rookie camp invites. Calvin Anderson, I think, at the what you said about Chris Boyd, that's how I feel about Calvin Anderson. I think Calvin Anderson for the Patriots. I think he'll be a guy.
Practice squad.
Because I go back to something back to when I saw that Football Life on Bill Belichick when he was fishing, or maybe it was the Jimmy Johnson Football Life. I don't remember, but they were fishing in the Keys and they were talking about kind of what they like, and because a lot of their philosophy on personnel is very similar. A lot of it intertwines. Yeah. And I remember Jimmy Johnson thinking, I was never going to draft dumb players. I don't want dumb players. I want smart players. Yeah. Belichick's the same way.
He is the same way.
Calvin Anderson with the freaking mathematics degree from Rice and as intelligent as he is. And a freaking 50-game starter at the college level at left tackle. I think that's a guy that, at the very least, they'll stash him away on the practice squad. And hell, Rod, he could be a guy that when you get down to final cuts, maybe he's a guy that say, you know what, we can't afford to put him on the practice squad. We got to put him on the 53 to keep him.
More importantly, even if he's not even there for a while, Dante Scarnecchia, I believe is his name, right? He's the offensive line coach. Yeah. He's the best offensive line coach in the league. Even if you're only with him for one offseason, ask guys like Cliff Kingsbury what it means to just be with the Patriots for 1 year and how it can change your football life.
Right. So let's go real quick in the time we got left. Matt, how much time we got left? A couple minutes? Okay. Matt's giving me I don't know how much time we got.
Well, we got to wrap up here.
Yeah. So, sure. Rod, as we talk about these undrafted free agents, Calvin Anderson, Andrew Beck, Chris Nelson, P.J. Locke, Brecken Hager, I believe those are the 5 guys that were on legitimate free agent deals, right? Yeah. Which of those guys you get the best chance to make a roster? Or little Jordan Humphrey, I forgot. I'm sorry.
And Gary Johnson.
And Gary Johnson.
I'll take Gary Johnson and PJ Locke right now. Those are my 2 top guys. But I love little Jordan Humphrey's situation. Yeah, I love it. And I love Calvin Anderson's situation.
I literally like Chris Nelson's situation.
That's good.
Because if you're going to if you're going to a team that is a 3-4 team, we know what the Steelers are defensively.
Yeah.
And Chris Nelson knows how to play over the ball in an odd front, knows it's a thankless job. I think he's got a chance to make that roster.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's got a shot. It's a good place to be, though, learn culture of football.
All those guys, man. I mean, Lil Jordan Humphrey with the Saints, Locke and Nelson with the Steelers, Beck and Anderson with the Patriots, got Gary Johnson with the Chiefs and Andy Reid and how forward-thinking they are as an organization. I know they're trying to retool that thing on defense right now, which makes me think he's got a shot anytime you bring in a new coordinator and you've got, coaching changes and, philosophical changes. If you're a new guy coming up with this new wave of players, maybe you've got a really good chance to make the roster that you otherwise wouldn't have had. So, at the end of the day, look, the surge is going to come. Rod, I don't know if I mentioned this to you or if Matt, you and I were talking about it before the break, before we started recruiting, before we started recording, if I could talk right today, good Lord. Tom Herman is tied with, as weird as it sounds, Charlie Strong and Fred Akers for Texas coaches since Darrell Roy was hired for the most draft picks produced through their first 2 years. The difference is with Fred Akers, you knew there was talent there still. He was recruiting talent, and there was still more to come. With Charlie Strong, we could clearly see after that first year, it was on a downward trend, and the hope was he would pull the nose up, just never did. But I think with Tom Herman now, like Fred Akers, you can see, okay, this thing is on an upward trend. You're just recruiting too much talent. And to tie all these conversations together, you're recruiting talent, but with the pro spread and with Todd Orlando's defense, you have brought in talent to play in systems where guys know the specific roles they're going to have. You have targeted talented guys to fit specific roles on this team. It's not just collecting talent and we'll hope everything sorts itself out. You recruited. It's Tom Herman's proactive approach to building a roster. That's the fundamental difference between him and Charlie Strong. You're recruiting guys, you're bringing the guys, but you know exactly how you're going to use them, how you want to use them, and kind of what path you see those guys going down.
That's good.
Well, I guess that's as good a way as any to end it on. I didn't think I was going to get the parting shot, but what the hell? Some weeks it just works out like that. Matt, thanks for everything, man.
You were more than welcome.
Rod B, appreciate the time and the knowledge.
Anytime, brother, anytime.
For Matt, for Rod, for Travis, the best damn videographer in the podcast game for everybody at the Austin Radio Network and the Horn. 1049, 1019, AM 1260, streaming on the Horn app and at hornfm.com, where you can get Rod B on the Rodcast each and every weekday from 1 to 3.
Shameless plug.
You can find this podcast on Megaphone on the drop-down menu at horns247.com. Anywhere you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. Remember, leave us a review, rate us, do all that fun stuff. Thank you guys so much for your support. And thanks to Matt. You can get our classic interviews, all of our archives on the Longhorn Blitz SoundCloud page.
Yep, just type in Longhorn Blitz.
For the Horn family, for the Horns 24/7 family, I am Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for downloading and listening, and we will catch you again on the next episode.
You've been listening to Longhorn Blitz with horns247.com. Remember, for the latest Longhorn news 24/7, visit horns247.com.